everyone, and welcome to another live webinar with Conduito and Sovereignty First. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can use technology to bypass the state when necessary in order to initiate change. And we're going to be having this discussion between Rob Herndon from Sovereignty First and Dr. Alex Norta of the Tallinn University of Technology. So Dr. Alex Norta is currently a research member at the Faculty of Software Science, Caltech, where he is a principal investigator of the Blockchain Technology Group and heads the IEEE Blockchain Estonia section. He was earlier a researcher at the Oulu University Secure Programming Group after having been a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Helsinki in Finland. He received his MSc degree in 2001 from the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, Austria, and his PhD degree in 2007 from the Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands. His PhD thesis was partly financed by the IST project Crosswork, in which he focused on developing the e-sourcing concept for dynamic interorganizational business process collaboration. His research interests include business process collaboration, workflow management, e-business transactions, service-oriented computing, software architectures, and software engineering, ontologies, mashups, and the social web. At IEEE EDOC 12 conference, Alex won the Best Paper Award for his full research paper with the title Inter-Enterprise Business Transaction Management in Open Service Ecosystems. For the blockchain tech startups, Qtum.org, Agrello.org, and Everex.io, Alex has worked on their respective white papers. Alex also serves as an advisor for several other blockchain tech startups, such as Kasha and RecordGram. So this is our introduction of Dr. Alex Norta. I'm going to be leaving now and allowing Rob Herndon to continue with this discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, welcome, Dr. Norta. This is a fascinating subject for me. We here at Sovereignty First, we've been working on the governance side of human interactions, and so building distributed governance networks to create self-governing agreements and that kind of thing. And I believe there's some connection between what we're working on and the technology, the blockchain side of things. So I'm really fascinated to dive into this and just see where this discussion goes. I found a paper of yours that you wrote for a conference called Establishing Distributed Governance Infrastructures for Enacting Cross-Organizational Collaborations. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of kind of collaborative governance networks, how they work, maybe beginning with traditional governance and governments, and how, are they working, are they not working, where are they falling short, and then maybe getting into a little bit about this idea of distributed governance and how that might change the equation. So if that's good with you, yeah, I think it'd be really great to start with just what are, in your viewpoints, the main problems of traditional governance and government models.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thank you for having me on and also for the kind introduction. And so the main problems, and actually there I have to go back to my PhD days, because I thought back then, indeed, I was working on cross-organizational process-aware collaboration models for supply chain automation and production automation. I had back then as my case study partner was MAN, which is a German truck producer in the supply chain.
Okay.
And so I developed these collaboration models using these patronets and so on and formal work. And then it all culminated in actually developing a smart contract language, which I didn't even know how to call back then, because I started working on it, I believe, in end of 2004.
Okay.
So I called it an e-contracting language, for lack of better wording. Only 10 years later, I realized when the Ethereum paper came out, that I should have called it a smart contract.
Yeah.
But 10 years earlier, when I was still struggling to do the proof of concept work for my PhD thesis, I called it e-contracting. And out of that, I developed these cross-organizational process-aware models, which are very peer-to-peer. And you have all sorts of options for setting up the collaborations between multiple partners, either in a master client or in a really full peer-to-peer way. And then it turned out actually, or it dawned on me that actually these collaboration models, they go much further than just truck production and supply chain. And one thing led to another. So I went to Finland as a postdoc, and then there used to be this company called Nokia in Finland.
Okay.
And, and that blew up exactly when I was there.
Oh wow!
It was a very strange experience, and suddenly all my budget, funding, everything, poof, was gone, because back then either came directly or indirectly from Nokia. So then I was struggling a bit what to do, where to go. And there was this little country right next door, Estonia. And I knew very little about it other than, okay, I can take a ferry on a weekend. It's very nice to go there on a weekend. But then I accepted a position there. And then very quickly I realized it's actually a fantastic country that has amazing e-governance models. Really? And in a sense, these two countries, Finland and Estonia, they're a little bit on an opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
When it comes to governance. So Estonia emerged out of the Soviet Union.
Right.
So you get the picture what type of governance they had, I mean, really hardcore, top-down and central plannings, everything centralized, and people at the bottom on the receiving ends. And so they emerged out of it and developed out of necessity, because it's a country of 1.3 million only citizens. So they cannot build up this massive bodies of bureaucracy, which you find, say, in Sweden or Finland or so on, or in Germany or Netherlands. But instead, they had smart people, and they figured out we can basically use the internet. So back in the Soviet days, this was the kind of the Silicon Valley experiment, Estonians told me, of the Soviet Union. So when they fell out of the Soviet Union, they had nothing, only brains. I mean, they were literally starving. That it was really, really severe.
Yeah.
So they developed fully on internet and open source software this X-Road governance system, which is very peer-to-peer and functions on blockchain. Not blockchain, but on a time stamping chain, which is centrally controlled.
Right.
And first I was in Finland before I came to Estonia. So I mean, and Finland has more this traditional, old school Western governance model,
Yeah, right.
which you find in the rest of the so-called Western
right.
EU countries, surely also in Canada, massive bodies of bureaucracy with humans who, basically qualitative governance, qualitative in the sense that you have basically a top that is in charge, that controls everything, and then you have basically the divisions down, and you have layers and layers and layers of middle management, and then some silos at the bottom, with people who are not allowed to think for themselves, who might be highly trained and capable, but because of this command and control top-down architecture of traditional governance, whether it's public or private, they are not allowed to think for themselves, but they just receive orders and do. And if they think for themselves, they're not allowed to admit that. The big problem, and there actually is very interesting, because a big problem is really this chimney effect.
Yeah.
So instead of having processes that go horizontally through,
right,
to add value for service creation, instead in this traditional top-down model, which is unfortunately extremely prevalent in these so-called Western countries, these days, and surprisingly not in these ex-Soviet countries like Estonia so much, because it goes basically automated away. The problem you have in these traditional models is chimney effect. So something happens at the bottom. You got the silos. There's several functional units gotta do something together. Let's say I want the driver's license.
Right.
Involves several bureaucratic units. Or let's say somebody dies. You wouldn't believe how complicated it is when somebody dies. How much, certainly when somebody dies in a foreign country. So like, for example, when I was in Dubai with many expats, and somebody passes away, family go somewhere, and then so much to do, involving several administrative units. If you have to send the paper around, and for all the decision making, everything has to go up the hierarchy, and then it goes down again.
Right.
And the problem is decisions need to be made now, but it's not possible because it has to be percolated up, and then it gets wrongfully distilled and combined, and then somebody gets way too late, wrongfully distilled and combined and pruned information, makes some very bizarre decision, which gets pushed down the hierarchy, dispatched, into the units at the bottom in the silos. And it's way too late. It's all weird, and it makes no sense. Then because we have these qualitative layers, in between, they all distort something. It's a bit like in school or in daycare, in primary school or whatever, where you played, what was it called? The telegraph game, something like that.
One person says something, and then it gets
here we go
around.
Yes.
Something totally different. No, absolutely. And I want to stick with that point there, because I think your observation is correct. Even we think of Western governments as being state of the art and agile and able to adapt to situations, and it's we find mostly now, especially in the information age, that it's not possible. And a lot of the issues that we see in the world are these really complex issues, global warming, mass migrations, loss of arable topsoil. I mean, a lot of these issues change dramatically within short amounts of time, and the responses to the issues have to be pretty direct and quick. And we are finding that a lot of the governance structures that we have are not able to act as agile.
Yes.
So and I think if we could touch on that a moment. So getting into this concept of distributed governance, how can this concept of distributed governance change then how human beings are able to adapt or change or address these problems?
I mean, one thing is that we should go through a process of massive devolution. And here I go right into the blockchain capabilities, public-private key and all that. So here, very interestingly, again in Estonia, you have very advanced e-governance capabilities. I'm not sure. Probably, I mean, people who are interested in e-governance, they know these examples: South Korea, and then Estonia, Singapore, as being good e-governance examples. So, from the Estonian perspective, which I can talk about firsthand, you basically need the ability to, for yourself, engage with systems, with strong identity authentication mechanisms. Yeah. So here, once again, blockchain comes into the picture with public-private key mechanisms.
Right.
Which actually even Estonia, not running on a blockchain, but let's say you could say loosely speaking, informally speaking, this X-road system it's called. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you hear me well enough?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's a little scratchy, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will talk like this. Now it's better, yeah?
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So if I can just touch on that real quick, I know a little bit about blockchain and a little bit about the technology that it's based on, distributed ledger technology. This idea for those who are a little less familiar as yourself, how can we explain just a real quick explanation of blockchain and how that system is set up?
I mean, very simply speaking, it's you just have to understand it's a data structure. It's basically blocks. You could say it's like maybe Lego stones with slots.
Yeah.
Into which events can enter.
Okay.
And one such block is then followed by another block.
Right.
And that block with fresh slots links to the previous block. Yeah.
Right.
And these blocks are mined into existence in a distributed way. So you have to solve cryptographic riddles in the original version of the first use case of modern blockchain technology. As we know, it's, say, Bitcoin, was the first modern use case, but we have now so many applications using blockchain technology. So very prominent are now also these so-called smart contract solutions. But essentially, for an event to enter one of these slots,
right,
you need to validate this event also in a distributed manner. And for that, you have these public-private key mechanisms.
Okay.
And essentially, once an event has entered a block, it's basically backed by cryptography.
Right.
Which at this point, at least let's stick to the use case of Bitcoin, has not been really hacked yet.
Right.
Now there's this idea of quantum computing and so on, that it will be able to break through all the cryptography, but we are still quite far away from that. But in any case, so this is basically like a ledger. And it basically, I mean, informally speaking, you could say it's like a truth engine.
Yeah.
Because the events enter based on a consensus algorithm into the blockchain.
Right.
So we consent, it's there. And once it's in the blockchain, it cannot be undone anymore. So it's basically immutable, unchangeable.
Right.
And the more blocks are then created and piled on to the other blocks, the more secure the previous blocks are. So you cannot undo those blocks. Only with enormous computational power and an enormous centralization of this computational power. And the idea is really that you have all these competing units or nodes with a lot of computing power that really compete against each other, solving, at least if you do this so-called proof of work, cryptographic riddle solving. Yeah. And in the end, you get a truth engine, a ledger, which just keeps growing, and it's also replicated. So that's one big distinction to the Estonian solution. So solutions like Bitcoin, the blockchain is replicated over thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes.
Right.
So when one node is attacked and taken down or corrupted in some way, it can basically restore. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the difference to centralized solutions. Like in Estonia, runs the centralized solution, which was actually hacked in 2007.
Oh wow!
By the neighborhood, and then the entire country collapsed. Yeah. So the Estonian system is just a time stamping mechanism.
Okay.
So that's one subset of the modern idea of blockchains, and that was taken down. So Bitcoin and blockchain and all these blockchain systems are under severe attacks, but it's like a fitness algorithm, so it has not been possible to take that down yet ever since the issuance of, say, Bitcoin in 2008.
Right.
So empirically speaking, it's quite a proof system.
Yeah.
Now, the point of smart contracts is that while, say, a cryptocurrency use case as Bitcoin has only a small set of commands on the protocol layer for security reasons, smart contract systems such as Ethereum has a programming language on the protocol layer.
Okay.
Yeah, that is
and let's go back a little bit. So as a potential use case for me is someone just interacting with a blockchain. So if I say I did a bank transaction and that transaction was accepted into the block, as you said, an event. So an event fits into the slot. So the event would be, I did a bank transaction. That information is accepted into the blockchain and it's written into the blockchain itself. And then every subsequent block that's added on is a copies the data from the block before. Right. And so then if a hacker is able to get into one block of the information and corrupted that one block, it wouldn't change the rest of the system.
It's computationally extremely challenging. I mean, you really need to centralize enormous computing power to achieve such a backtracking, and basically, it's in a very established system like say Bitcoin. It's actually not possible. So if you fork Bitcoin and you bring it out all newly, you could aim for a so-called 51% attack, where you have enough computational power centralized. At least 51% to actually achieve then such corruption of a blockchain.
Right.
But effectively, it's not working. So besides these so-called financial technology applications like cryptocurrencies, the idea becomes really interesting once you start using smart contract systems for e-governance, because then you can use the same principles as for, say, running a crypto currency. You can certainly run for all sorts of governance issues where you have basically a trust engine in the center of multiple parties in a trustless collaboration environment. And that becomes very interesting because then what you achieve is, if, say, we have this traditional model of kind of a hierarchy with qualitative governance, and then qualitative in the sense that you have people who are in the middle management on top of some silos.
Between the silos. And
yes. So what you can do now, and that might be quite scary, is you can pretty much cut out these layers and layers of middle management that are responsible for the qualitative style of governance, which is very problematic also because often we get fraud and nepotism and corruption and sleaze and whatever to varying degrees. You can replace that now with a quantitative governance model, where instead you use cryptography and blockchain technology for running ledgers. Also with the logics, which used to run in the middle management of the qualitative governance. Now you can replace that basically with codes, smart contract codes. That then channels events in based on certain logics with consensus algorithms of various degrees. That's not just proof of work, it's also proof of stake and other algorithms. Channels events into blockchain. Blockchain gets replicated, is secure, and then it becomes very interesting because now you've got the immutable traceability.
Right. And so you're not having essentially middle management or people in between the silos keeping track of the event and what happened and who did what and what
exactly, which is then very prone prone for all sorts of manipulation. I mean, I did all sorts of studies. One study has been what is it called? For land title management.
Right.
So in many countries around the world, land title management is very problematic because, say, some farmer or fisherman next to the beach, and I go fishing there, and suddenly some oligarch comes along and wants and thinks, well, I could develop this and just put some nice hotels on there.
Right.
But there's this pesky fisherman or farmer, So okay, I go to the public servants.
Yeah.
And they got the centrally controlled database, so I just give them a little bit of
right. They changed the system and
exactly, and then suddenly the fisherman loses the property,
right,
without even knowing that, gets evicted, and the oligarch can just build his hotel.
Right.
Now that sounds maybe absurd. Could assume in a country like, I don't know, Canada or so, or Finland, I don't know, but I can assure you in many, many, many countries around the world, this is a daily problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is just and this is just one example of where blockchain technology can be used to create basically tickets of ownership, that are stored on a blockchain and that are immutable, and where you cannot bribe anyone to quickly fiddle around, with a centrally controlled database. It's all not possible. Instead, if the farmer wants to sell the property, he has to sign off with the private key, which is of course very, very private. Yeah, I mean, really secret.
Right.
Exactly. So there's nobody in the middle doing the central planning and then saying, well, I now, because I'm the public servant, allow you to trade this property and so on.
Right. And so it takes control then of the system out of the hands of the hierarchical structure. And so the hierarchy can't then decide what goes and what doesn't go.
In the traditional model, yes.
Right. And so now we're opening up this network of governance over agreements to a much more decentralized system.
Absolutely.
Being it's immutable because it's keyed in there. It's been replicated in all of the different blocks along the chain, and so having one person or a few people have the power to go in and change something is not possible in that system.
Yeah, that's correct. So in that sense, so if you extrapolate this thought experiment, and it's, I mean, just based on the technological capabilities further,
sure,
then there's a problem for traditional government and governance because it's not needed anymore.
Right.
So even for countries like Estonia, it was very funny because when I came here some 7 years ago, to Estonia, and I learned about the country, all the things I was not aware of when I was still living in Finland. Of course, very impressive governance models compared to any country. But then I was just thinking further, and I said, okay, the governance models are very nice, but the tech at that point, this X-road technology and so on. So this was nice in 91 when they started building it.
Right.
But like 2012, 13, and so on, it started being a bit legacy. And of course, then once blockchain technology, smart contracts technology, and so on started spreading, of course, the technology, is legacy.
Right.
And So in the beginning, when I said that in Estonia, the Estonians, because they have a lot of national pride, of course, in their fantastic e-governance systems, they were very upset when I posed this critique around 2012. That the tech is outdated and all that. They didn't want to hear it.
No.
But then suddenly they jumped on the bandwagon and started coming up with many stories that the entire country actually already runs on blockchain technology. Which is also not true, but so there's now this drive towards okay, we got a blockchain technology, but then of course they still want to have some sort of state control.
Right.
And there's now the challenge, and this is very painful to let go of control. And if you go absolutely further, there has been this nice experiment. That was realized as a prototype. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it was called BitNation. I think it even still exists.
No, I didn't. Okay. No.
I think it's bitnation.co. I don't know if I can type here something. Maybe here, yes. Let me first check if it's really bitnation.co, I believe.
Sure.
Bitnation.co, the link.
Yeah, then we can share that.
Yes. Okay, I will post. And really, so was now. So here's the stream. Yes. Okay. So maybe you can share this somehow, because this says it's just a private chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this intrigued me. This BitNation as a prototype. It didn't really take off, but just this idea, if we think about it, that governance or even government becomes like a Linux project, like an open source project. And actually X-Road in a sense, which is the e-governance backbone infrastructure system, is a bit like that. It's open source and it's actually sold. So there are several versions and forks, primarily run by some Estonian companies, but anyone can fork X-Road.
Okay.
X-Road. There should also be a link somewhere. X-Road Estonia. Yes. Yeah. So here is the link. Yeah, and Estonia makes good money with this. I mean, there's several companies making good money selling this. Even Finland actually has, in a minute way, adopted X-Road. And BitNation is a bit the same idea. So government becomes like a Linux project. Yeah. So you want to start a nation,
right?
You just fork the code and tweak it a bit, and you got your nation going with. It's a platform. It runs on blockchain. You can build all sorts of services on it, and then you can run it any way you want it. You could run it, say, as a kind of libertarian type of platform. Maybe you want to run it as a communistic platform, or you want to run it as a Sharia platform, or you want to run it as a social democratic platform, or maybe crypto-anarchistic platform, as you wish. And then you have to advertise for citizens. There's a very different model. So this intrigued me enormously, even when BitNation didn't go anywhere as a platform to take off, but just the idea I felt was extremely interesting to have basically to have a platform that you can fork like a Linux distribution or some sort of open source project, and then differently to a regular government that has a territory where you are coerced into membership.
Right.
In this case of the platforms,
they
have to market for you. They have to attract you. Yeah.
Right.
Because there's competition between the government platforms, which are these open source blockchain platforms. And I can be just a member of several platforms. Maybe say I'm an anarchist and I'm not sure what type of anarchist I am. I mean, there's a broad spectrum of different types of anarchists. Yeah. And so I just want to experiment, and I become a member of 3 anarchist platforms, and maybe I want to try minarchist platform too, yeah, which is a little bit more conventional. And say then one platform suddenly sets up governance rules and policies which I don't appreciate. So then I just cancel my membership.
Right.
And maybe I want to just become a member of only one platform which has good governance according to my own value system.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with the territory. It's just based on, okay, I have my values.
Right.
I just look around. These are the platforms. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sign up with that platform, and I'm happy there because it matches with my own values. I'm not anymore forced. Say, I'm on a territory and I'm locked in there, but I have my own value system which does not conform to some coercively imposed and coercively propagated value system on the territory, which coercively forces me into participating.
Yeah.
So I think if you go really far with that thought experiment, it becomes quite wild.
Yes.
And the thought experiment is out there, and I think it poses to be quite a challenge for your traditional, even quite libertarian countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even quite libertarian countries are still very coercive when we are honest and think about it. And suddenly, so if this idea takes off of the platforms, of the government platforms, and by coincidence, actually, Estonia is already a country in the cloud. Let me find this, Estonia. Cloud country.
Thinking about this, tending to be hierarchical systems that we've built as governance structures around the world. This idea of being able to separate out into less centralized of control and coercion, as you're saying. If we open that into this more distributed network of governance, and so allowing for the control over that system to then also be distributed, what are some effects then we could potentially see, do you think, on the ground with just the way that people interact, potentially levels of collaboration, cooperation amongst groups? How does that change if we take out a centralized coercive force and move more into this distributed network of governance?
I mean, when I think about it, so I'm not a historian and I'm certainly not an American, but I know in the early days of the United States, that's precisely what you had, didn't you?
Yes, that's what we attempted. I would say we've moved away from that, but that is what we attempted.
That's the curse then of Plato's The Republic, right?
Sure.
So you start off all fresh and it's all wild, and because it's wild and fresh and people can, freely transact and engage, there's no overhead, no rule, no taxation. You just immediately take off and have an enormous explosion of general welfare. It's called the free market, or it's kind of anarcho-capitalism, basically.
Sure.
Which leads to an instant explosion of wealth wherever it's practiced. I mean, one example where this was also practiced is, say, Hong Kong.
Yes.
Yeah? In the early stage, being a little fisher village, and boom, suddenly center of the world. Finance, production, whatever. I mean, really explosion of wealth and general welfare enormous. So wherever this was tried, it worked enormously. Yeah. And so, of course, if you project the same principles into a virtual platform, you have the same effects. Of course, it's wild, it's crazy, it's chaotic, But in the end, at least if we go by the real world, historic examples, we should experience the same effects than basically a re-emergence of free type of anarcho-capitalistic, mechanisms. And actually, that's also what we had a bit, if I may add this, in the early days of when blockchain took off, and there were all these startups and so on. There was this very famous ICO phase, 2017-18.
Yeah.
Wild, many scams, but also many good companies coming out of it. Bit of a Darwinistic experience, but an enormous explosion of innovation and wealth.
Right.
Which unfortunately now has been very much clamped down again on many angles,
right,
and tempered. But yeah, so I think so that brings me to this thought of Rothbardian Austrian school of thought.
Okay.
Anarcho-capitalism. I'm not sure if you're aware of Rothbard.
Not too much. Yeah, I would.
Mises, I could maybe share this. Rothbard,
Sure.
very famous Austrian school of thought economist. Rothbard, and actually, so I'm also not an economist, but I'm just trying to make sense of Murray Rothbard. Here we go.
How do we?
So he took the Austrian school of thought. Well, at least has a short bio, but you can then do your own research about Rothbard. So he took Ludwig von Mises, who was, we could say, a middle-of-the-road libertarian, maybe minarchist.
Mm-hmm.
He took that further to a more anarcho-capitalistic level, the Austrian school of thought, which is very heterodox.
Okay.
And actually, if you allow blockchain technology to unfold, also to affect the governance models,
right,
then this is pretty much, from a philosophical point of view, where you end up.
Right.
So it's a re-emergence of this kind of Austrian school of thought of free market economics, which has been buried under a lot of statism, which favored Keynesianism and monetarism,
right,
which kind of seems to be. And again, I'm not an economist, so I'm sure the economists will criticize me hard. But as a layman, hobby economist, it seems that Keynesianism and monetarism are sort of on the way out, maybe a bit falsified.
Yeah.
As we move into the networked society that is more peer-to-peer, away from this mass society, which is which was typical for the old school industrial age. Now we have the networked society, which kind of seems to detach itself from the nation state and all the central planning mechanisms, central banks, and central government, and all that, more towards peer-to-peer, maybe territory-independent networks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the fascinating point for me, is the shift, because I do think that we're seeing it, especially within the last 20, 25 years of the explosion of the internet. The amount of information that's available to anyone. We, at the touch of our cell phone right now, we have probably more information than presidents and kings and queens had in the 1990s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's fascinating. And so you're right, as we build these networks, peer-to-peer networks, individuals, maybe organizations to organizations, and we start to see this breakdown of the silos, as you talked about, and this centralizing hierarchical structure, and we're building out these stronger networks. What would you say, as you commented, there's this need, I think, this feeling of we need to control the system, comes a little bit from the outside. How can this network system that's built built governance amongst itself, how can that, just in your opinion, and defend against that desire to again control and coerce?
So I'm just observing what's going on, and it's really fascinating how the established central planning system fights back.
Right.
By criminalizing this technology, or the set of technologies that enable the networked peer-to-peer type of society where, which runs much more on voluntarism and non-initiation of force.
Right.
Versus the coercion and violence-based central planning approach, which we still have.
Right.
Also, let's not kid ourselves in the so-called free Western countries,
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're definitely not there. No, absolutely.
Yes.
And
so, I mean, I see it more like a fitness algorithm, yeah? And I have to go back to Mahatma Gandhi. Had this, so I have to phrase him. I think he said, first they ignore you,
right.
Then they laugh about you,
Yep.
Then they fight you,
Yep.
And if they can't beat you, then you win.
That's right.
And that's precisely what's kind of going on, because when I think now, and it's really, really amazing in this blockchain world, 2 years seem to be like 10 years.
Yeah.
In the internet age, and maybe 20 years or more in the pre-internet age. It's crazy. But we had so much resistance. I mean, just think of, let's go back to the first use case of what we call now modern blockchain technology, which is based on old ideas that have been combined in a novel way,
right,
into blockchain as we know it now. But all the ideas are actually quite old, going back to the cypherpunk movement of the 90s, really old stuff. But cryptocurrencies, so they came up under the radar. The central planners couldn't spot it somehow.
Right.
So first it was ignored, then it was kind of ridiculed. And then when it took over, then suddenly they started fighting it by criminalizing it. There's tons of documentaries online, how people, the early adopters, ended up in prison cells and so on, and had to, go on the run to all sorts of, had to leave their home countries and go to other countries and so on. And now what latest news? What PayPal?
Yeah.
Adopts cryptos, and banks and so on. They all want to get in, and I don't know. I even heard Rothschild is buying bitcoins.
Yeah, right.
Big time. Rothschild himself. I mean, this amazing. So. Yeah, and the same which we'll just experience with also on the governance level, government. So I think, given the crisis we have now, I think, again, I have to go back a little bit from this personal experience. Estonia, collapsing out of the Soviet bloc, being so poor, they survived for a while on food donations from Sweden and Denmark and Finland and Norway, and came out of nowhere. At the time, jumping over so many generations of legacy system, going right at the time to, okay, we do government by internet, open source.
Right.
That's it. We have not a choice. Using cryptography. Yeah.
Right.
Really amazing in the 90s. I mean, really fascinating. Now legacy, but still amazing. Yeah. So I think with all the crisis we have now, I think that we will go through a collapse. That's my personal take on what we see.
Yeah.
I mean, we have crazy numbers like trillion. I mean, when the repo market crisis happened towards the end of 2019, I think what the Fed printed $6 trillion.
Yes.
The ECB doing pretty much the same stuff in one day.
Yeah.
Talking about hyperinflation. I mean, this is insane.
It's insane.
6 trillion in one day. One central bank alone. Yeah. So I mean, we are already living in a complete hyperinflation environment, like Zimbabwe, Venezuela. It's just it hasn't, because they stuff it somehow with all their magic algorithms into the shadow banking sector somehow. So this, again, I'm not an economist or a finance expert, but this is what I sense. What's going on? They're kind of plugging it in there, because there's this massive bubble, and it doesn't hyperinflate yet to the average man in the street and woman in the street.
Yeah.
But it's coming. You cannot stop this. I mean, I think the system is dead since 2008, and this massive, qualitative bureaucracy bubble, that has only been possible to grow the way we have it, at least in Western countries, as a legacy governance system, has only been possible because of money printing out of thin air by central banks.
Right.
And that's very much coming to an end. And I think, and I really hope it will be kind of an orderly collapse and transition.
Hopefully. Yes.
That's my worry, yeah. But I think
right.
what Estonia experienced in the early 90s, is what's coming to Western countries, a collapse.
Yeah.
Very hard. Hopefully, I hope people can, go through it without too much despair.
Right.
And then the only option will be to really adopt these modern systems, which are just so much more cost effective and efficient and allow to recover, away from I think this, like a dead man walking central planning system.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so I'd like to open it up to questions if we can.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone has a question, you can just type it in the comments section. And we have a question that goes all the way back to almost the beginning. So Mika, thank you for your question. And sorry it took us a while to get to it, but we'll do our best here. So Mika's question is: quantum crypto is said to make asymmetric cryptography useless in 5 years or so. What happens to blockchains with public-private keys?
Yes. So, okay, my take on it is that you might, I'm not sure if you witnessed this, but Google came out not so long ago, was it a year and a half ago, claiming they solved the quantum problem. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And what happened? So I'm going back to this paraphrasing Mahatma Gandhi.
Right.
First ignore you, then they laugh about you, then they fight you, then you win.
Right.
So that story was launched by, I believe it was Google, which is a bit of a not quite so private organization, actually a public utility, it seems, organization. Yeah. And they launched the story as well. We solved the quantum problem, and now we can track all these Bitcoin accounts and everything. Woo! Immediately. So at the time for the system, the established finance system, all the cryptos came up a little bit too hard, too strong.
Yeah.
And boom, they could crash it, like cuts 50% of value out of everything. Yeah.
Right.
But when you look at quantum computing in reality, I mean, at this point in time, the quantum computing solutions are really for very, very specific problems.
Okay.
And also quantum computers to run. So I'm not a quantum computer expert, but we have to be realistic where quantum computing is. So it's a very promising, visionary computing concept.
Okay.
But I think, we are far away from the point where quantum computers can realistically start hacking all the cryptos and blockchain cryptography. That's one thing. Secondly, what I didn't talk about was that you can actually fork these blockchains.
Okay.
So you can either soft fork or hard fork. Okay, let's not get into what the difference is, but hard fork
details. Yeah.
Yes, basically you can fork internal language. You just issue a new version.
Yeah.
So it's basically software, and what you can do is that you can then basically fork a new version, and kind of migrate to a quantum proof blockchain version.
Interesting.
And you can do this. I mean, that's not the one and only blockchain. I hear this, the blockchain. That doesn't exist. There's so many endless amounts of blockchain solutions for all sorts of things these days. I can't even keep track anymore.
Yeah.
And they can be forked to quantum proof versions if the need exists. So again, it's a fitness algorithm. Yeah. Right. Like, say, let's go back to Bitcoin being massively hacked every day, not just by private pirateering individuals, but you can rest assured by governments and
absolutely
central banks, and they just want to take this down.
Right.
And it's a fitness algorithm, so you just patch it up and move ahead, and it's proof it works. I mean, I think it's necessary to go through these challenges.
Right.
And I think if the day will come that quantum computing really realistically can crack the cryptography of these various blockchain solutions, there will be the forks. Plus, I can tell you already that there are already numerous researchers around the world who already work on quantum-proof blockchain solutions. So I don't see any problem there.
Going on right now to potentially fight back against.
No, there are already so many scientists working around the world on quantum-proof blockchain solutions. So okay, you just then fork to new versions. So if you don't do that, you stagnate.
Yeah, right.
And quantum computing comes around, it can really break through your cryptography. Then your blockchain solution is not fit enough anyway.
Right.
And goes the way of the dinosaurs. So that's another thing. Maybe mentality-wise, going away from the central planning thinking. So there's an open ecosystem, so you have competing solutions.
Right.
And you have to be a good solution to attract the customer base, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if you can't keep up with the pace and you can't stand the heat,
then
you got to get out.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. So it's basically a free open market space where you got to keep up. Also with quantum computing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I haven't seen any other questions yet. So if you put in a question and we don't see it, please put it back in.
Maybe I can do one thing, that I just post a little bit some links about myself. I'm not sure if I posted this one already. So this is about my little group at Caltech. Then maybe my LinkedIn. Where am I here? So maybe some people want to contact me via LinkedIn.
Yes, please. That would be great.
Just go here. And okay, maybe if somebody's more interested on my research stuff, then here's a little academic portfolio. And otherwise, I got quite a digital profile, so to speak. So you just type in my name on a search engine of your choice, and probably you'll find a lot of stuff about me you don't even want to know.
Potentially, sure. I mean, everything's on the internet these days, so
yeah.
Yeah, well, this has been fascinating for me. I really have enjoyed this discussion around peer-to-peer networks. How do we start to create this new form of governance, not just applied technologies with blockchain and distributed ledger, but also how can we take those same concepts and apply it to human governance, political governance, things like that. So we start to build these new systems of networked peer-to-peer, deals and agreements that happen every day, that we then can create a system that's based around this network of individuals and takes out the need for a centralized state to, as you say, coerce or control people in a certain way, where it allows, and we've seen this throughout our history, when we can create those networks, we do find a lot of success as humans. So I am fascinated to move into this new, potentially new world of governance, and fascinated to see how these concepts around blockchain can be, and distributed ledger technology and distributed governments can be applied.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, Dr. Norta, if you have any other final comments, we have about a minute left, and then we'll let people go.
Yeah, so I must say that when it comes to blockchain technology, what I particularly appreciate is the interdisciplinary nature. So there's a lot of space for all sorts of diverse people, mathematicians, computer scientists, cryptographers, finance people, law people. So, for example, I'm supervising a PhD student from a law, IT law department, also, who probably will still defend this year. Politics, let's say information technology and politics, and software engineering and database, and it's amazing. So I really like this interdisciplinary nature and the socio-technical impact that this technology has on society. And if you go a little bit further into it, then it's I think a bit comparable to what the steam engine used to be for the industrial age.
Yeah. Yes.
So very exciting stuff, and I think people should look into it.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. We have unfortunately come to the end of our hour, so I will turn this to Melissa, and we can
Thank
stop
you.
there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Really
Dr. Norta. Thank you, Rob, for a great conversation. For me, I'm a neophyte on these topics, so it was really fascinating to hear you talk about them and link them back to the work that we're doing with Sovereignty First. So thank you so much for joining us. And to our audience, we will be hosting another live webinar very soon. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Yes, thank you very much
for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Dr. Norta.
Goodbye.
Cheers. Yeah. Bye-bye.